The human mind is a wonder of creation. We've learned more and documented more in the last 10 years of how it works, thinks, operates, sleeps, and repairs itself than in the history of documented science. Now, the ancients, they had, through their divine inspiration and wisdom, were able to understand a lot of the power that lies in our mind. And we're reaching this super interesting convergence point where science is meeting traditional and spiritual wisdom. And even with all this knowledge, I believe we've only uncovered just a fraction of the power that lies in our mind. I feel so blessed to have been exposed to both sides of the equation, and to me, the next step in development and human consciousness is how can we use this combined knowledge to improve our mental abilities, our mental chemistry, our ability to think, reason, judge, analyze, and interpret. How can we use the images in our mind's eye, our third eye, to create a better world? To me, this is the next step in human consciousness, and everything that's ever existed in the history of man had to start in imagination and in the mind first.
The ability of our minds to continue to grow, change, strengthen, and adapt over time is extremely exciting and something that we should continue to explore and enhance. Now, of course, we have things like age, genetics, poisons, environment, friends, family, and a lot of other things that can either encourage its development or hamper its ability to repair itself. But we've learned so much that there are definitely things we can do to increase its ability to recover from past trauma. Now, I've met some amazing people on this journey who, in their 70s and 80s, continue to get sharper, brighter, and their minds were much more discerning. And it's extremely exciting because if we can take a lot of their wisdom, share it with our youth, not only can we raise awareness and consciousness, but we can band together to really fight off the evils that are trying to keep us at a much lower vibration. Now, one of the things I'm very excited to share, and why I'm doing this, is the role of oxygen and how we can utilize it in a hyperbaric environment to maximize its effect on the body and the brain. Now, it's something that I've used not only for myself, but for clients and friends and many people that I've met who have used it for that purpose to enhance and improve what was happening up here. And at its very basic, we're just utilizing oxygen, the fundamental molecule for life that is necessary for 99% of all biological processes. And we're just super saturating the mind and the body in very intermittent periods. And with these short durations of hyperoxia, we get all these amazing benefits. Now, it's always helpful to look at basic physiology and respiration to appreciate why a hyperbaric environment is so helpful. Now, when we breathe, obviously we have to do it. Our diaphragm opens up, we create a little vacuum, and atmospheric pressure will help push the oxygen into our lungs. Now, that's a very important thing to realize, is the importance of atmospheric pressure to help move gases through fluids. So that's why we feel better on higher pressure days, or why astronauts have to wear really hyperbaric suits to get that pressure and get the blood and oxygen continuously in a proper exchange. Now, an important consideration that can be overlooked and not necessarily well understood is the importance of atmospheric pressure when it comes to moving gases along in the body. Now, in the brain and in the cortex, most cells are within about 13 micrometers away from a vascular supply. And for adequate diffusion to occur, you need to typically be about 80 micrometers away. So for it to be that close in the brain shows how important we need quick, efficient exchange to happen, because the brain is just requires such a constant upkeep of flow and circulation. Now, going back to the lungs, once we get the oxygen down into our alveoli, we can appreciate how we need that pressure to move the oxygen into the plasma to be diffused and carried by the red blood cells and carried to areas that we need it. So when we look at the lungs, it's spiritually, it's the tree of life, and it's something that is extremely important to take very good care of. And there are a lot of things that we can do even just by breathing that not only alters brain chemistry, hormone production, it can change your heart rate, and it can change your state of consciousness. And we can do this in many different ways through meditation, exercise, sex, psychotropic drugs to either enhance and improve it or maybe cause some not so desirable effects. Now, when we get to the brain and we study sort of the basic fundamentals of it, we see that it's such a powerhouse. We need 15 to 20% of all cardiac output, 20 to 30% of glucose consumption, 20 of 80 power watts in the body, and the most complex vessels are the ones that supply the brain. Everyone has a unique vascular structure in the brain, and the ones that supply it, not only do we need a strong structure, we also need the blood-brain barrier to be operating at a high efficiency. These, again, arteries, capillaries, veins, they gotta grow, change, and adapt as the body grows. And not only that, the ventricles, they produce cerebrospinal fluid to bathe the cortex to keep the proper microenvironment. And there are so many safety mechanisms in place to ensure the proper supply, that there are multiple arteries and arterioles that can supply different areas. So the brain has a lot of compensatory mechanisms in place just in case there's an issue. But as you can see, even if there's a small change in blood flow to one area, it can lead to massive damage. And things such any sort of trauma or a traumatic brain event, hypertension, diabetes, Alzheimer's, dementia, anything that can change the environment or increase pressure or alter the circulation, it can lead to catastrophic effects down the road. So as we age, we have these accumulation of injuries that happen, or microfractures, microstresses that over time impairs our ability to combat a lot of the oxidative stress. Will actually require more oxygen, more nutrients to continue to function at a high level. Now, as you can see, we need a lot of things to go right for the optimal environment and the optimal use of our minds and our bodies. And we do a lot of these things naturally. The right amount of nutrition, exercise, water, combination of science and spiritual evolution. We definitely do our best to keep our brain healthy, but we need to do what we can in a very smart and investigative way to keep our microcirculation as healthy as we can. And as we do this, we get these macro benefits into our blood, into our organs, into our skin, and into our mind. Now, this leads to why the rationale for hyperbaric is actually quite strong. Now, I've been in this journey for about 5 years probably, and even then there was quite a bit of research and quite a few people starting to explore it for many different things. But these last 2 years, really, the research has exploded all across the world. And here in Canada and North America, we're definitely much further behind when it comes to incorporating more natural or alternative therapies, just because of how mainstream medicine is set up here. And that's fine, that's why I left the hospital. But for those of us who can sort of think for ourselves, or innovators and early adopters, we can really benefit a lot from what's been being proven and use it for ourselves or for family and friends and for our loved ones. So the great thing about hyperbaric oxygen, especially for the use in the brain, is that it has quite a few neurological protective effects. And to me, what I believe it does is that it has a very powerful anti-inflammatory action. By increasing the amount of oxygen in the area, you improve metabolism, because your mitochondria can just create much more ATP at a much greater rate. And what happens is that when you go from a hyperoxic to a sort of normal oxygen environment, your body will want to naturally produce stem cells. Now, we've seen amazing things happen from stem cell implantation, and a lot of these new these stem cell injections, we're seeing some amazing things happen. And what they're doing actually in a lot of areas is they're combining both hyperbaric with stem cell injections, because what happens is that the stem cells, when they're injected, they don't necessarily survive. But in a hyperbaric environment, not only will they survive, but they'll continue to increase. Studies have shown even after one session, you can double your stem cells. And after about, I believe, 8 to 10, we start the process of angiogenesis, where we create new blood vessels. And this is very useful for things such as wound healing, stroke, Alzheimer's, diabetes, where our microcirculation begins to get eroded. Now, because of the effects of oxygen, not only does it decrease inflammation, but any sort of areas where there's excessive edema or pressure will start to go down, it will start to circulate again, and this hypersaturation can, for the time being, reverse a lot of damage that's happening. But again, for me, it's good for the reversal of damage, but if we can use it even before that to enhance and strengthen what we already have, all the better. Now, in my next video, I'm gonna go over a lot of the current research, and there's a lot. From stroke, Alzheimer's, dementia, TBI, PTSD, fibromyalgia, autism, cancer, and even in these last 2 years, there's been some amazing conferences on anti-aging, regenerative medicine. All these major health facilities, they're incorporating hyperbaric medicine for a variety of things, and it's something that I'm going to explore much more in depth in the next video. So I don't want to get too in depth now, but thank you for joining me, and that's all for today. And hopefully I was able to spark a few minds and get some neurons firing. So please help support the channel, subscribe, give me a like, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.